It's funny because it's a combination of things, right? It's doing that thing and giving ourselves credit for what we've done, right? It's getting paid for that thing, which is like a different level of anxiety. And then it's actually like going out and selling yourself as that thing, right? Because I think there's even sometimes that window of like, well, I'm doing it, but no one really knows I'm doing it. So it's like it's hidden. It's not really public yet. And I like what you said about expertise, right? Because it is one of those things where, of course, there's always someone with more information. And probably the best experts know that they don't know anything, right? That's kind of a marker of expertise, is that you're trying to fill in gaps all the time. Probably someone who calls themselves an expert who doesn't do any additional research is going to very soon not be an expert. And so those are all really important things. And I think when it comes to the focus, because you kind of mentioned that it's like, well, when I was helping teams, it was external, right? But then eventually it shifted the focus to me. And I think that's where people get really caught up with imposter syndrome, is that in the job search, and you do resume rewrites and things like that, like it's so hyper focused on the individual, and it loses touch with why we're doing this stuff in the first place, right? And a big piece of what I help coach people with is like, get the focus off of yourself, because that's probably the reason that you're having this like anticipatory anxiety, right? Because you're just sitting there and you're like, well, am I the best coder? No. So why do they want to hire me? It's like, well, that's not, they're not looking for the best coder. They're looking for someone who can solve problems. And I'm curious, like when it comes to that focus, right? What do you see going wrong in like the messaging around careers when it comes to the focus on the individual, the focus on the company, the focus on the dynamic between the two? What are your thoughts on that?
I think, well, when it comes to interviewing, I think most people take the wrong approach. I want you to share during that interview. I want you to share genuine stories that resonate with, some things that you really enjoy doing. Why? Because you're going to get excited. They're going to see and hear that, regardless if it's on video or if it's in person. And I want you to be comfortable enough in your own skin, in your own competencies, that you could care less. Look, you're never going to be able to convince somebody to hire you. And just like you said, right, you're not going to be necessarily the best coder, the best of this or the best of that. But the combination of everything you bring. So I really want you to share and know that you're not going to persuade them whatsoever. I think once you kind of know that and relax a little bit, I tell you that the rest is fairly easy. And I always tell people to put you in a better state prior to interviewing. Watch, if you like Seinfeld, if you like something funny, right before that interview, watch a video on YouTube that just gets you excited, that gets you smiling. Why? Because it's actually going to, during the interview process, it's going to put you in a different state. And that state, I'm getting pretty deep here, but
Get deep.
but
I
it
love it.
does, but it does. It actually puts you in a spot where you're just joyful, you're happy, and when you do that, what you share comes off more naturally. And that's what they want during an interview. I interviewed thousands of people in my career. And I want to know, I know what I want to know about them. I want them to share the real you, the real them, right? I do, because sometimes I'll learn things I want to learn, and some things I'll learn some stuff I don't want to learn and then move on. But that's good. But you you want to make that person comfortable. And let's face it, organizations, companies that interview people do not normally train their people to do interviews. And that's the hard part. Maybe if they're in HR, or maybe they've been doing it a long time, but the goal isn't to get somebody. The goal is to get somebody to really share, their experiences and what they can do. Again, it's not that gotcha. Oh, I got them on that question. And believe it or not, that is still the mindset with some people that do interviews is I'm going to weed out these people. So I'm going to ask them these difficult questions. No, ask them questions that that uh, allows them, to share those stories.
Well, and that's a big piece of, um, overcoming imposter syndrome. You sort of said this earlier, but it's kind of getting yourself to a place where you care a little bit less. And that's such a counterintuitive thing for people who are looking for jobs, right? They're like, well, shouldn't I be excited about this role? Shouldn't I want this job? Shouldn't I? It's like, yeah, but it's almost like in the movie when you have that nerdy kid who's trying to talk to the girl and keeps tripping over himself, like showing, it's like the more anxious you are, the more likely you are to screw it up, right? And the more pressure you put on yourself to be perfect, the less chances you are to be perfect. And one of the things that I've noticed lately is like, changing the sort of perspective on it where every single job seeker that I talk to about interviews is trying to avoid things going wrong. And I'm like, no, try and flip that. Try and get better at reacting when things go wrong because there's always going to be something that goes wrong. And you, as a public speaker, it's like, yeah, there's always going
Right.
to be something. You're going to forget something. You're going to go on a tangent or someone's going to ask a question. Like, there's always going to be something. And what we need to do is build that ability to bounce around or bounce back and things like that. And I really liked what you said here. It's more about making the person comfortable and having a good tone. I've had so many people that I've talked to who have been interviewers who say like you might not know any of the answers to any of the questions, but if you answer them in a certain way where you're like, I don't know that, but I do know this, but I don't know that, but I do know this, and I could learn that, and like there's a tone to not knowing that is really positive. What have you sort of seen around tone setting in interviews?
Yeah, again, it's really coming off as genuine. If you don't, if you don't know something and you try to fake it during that interview, it's gonna come across that you have no idea what you're what you're discussing. So that is perfect. I've never had that experience, but one that's close is, and just moving on. And if you find about 6 different stories that you can share during interviews, you're going to find that those stories probably can you could use for multiple answers, maybe even just tweaking them a little bit. I had a client recently uh, give the same answer twice, but just slightly different, and they appreciated what what they were doing because they told them that, but they liked it because they still got additional information, even though it was the same story, and that's what they told them. This person did get the job. Uh, they did a little follow up prior to giving them that offer, and they wanted to know a little bit more, but they still again appreciated. So it's really having those stories. When I say stories, well, I'm not talking about any thing that you're making up, right? It's genuine things that you feel good about. Because again, when you're sharing something, if you're sharing something about your personal life, with somebody, right? You get excited when same thing during the interview. If you just share stories, those metrics will come out, those accomplishments, those achievements will come out. So again, you're totally right. You're going to screw up. You're going to flub up or whatever. Not provide them with the right answer. Roll with it. Uh, don't be so caught up, like you said, on getting it perfect. Same thing on LinkedIn. I don't edit my videos on LinkedIn. Now I may put little captions or whatever, but once I realized it's not about if you sneeze. It's not about
Mhm.
if you cough or some dog barks in the back. What it's about the content that you're delivering. Most people know you're going to be a little bit nervous during an interview, and that's
Yeah.
okay because that means you want to do well and you want to be there. It's just delivering that message that sometimes can be difficult for people.